U.S. military takes a deep dive into futuristic goggles. I just hope it's not a deep dive into the shallow and head first. Let's go.
We've got an exclusive look at one of the military's latest investments. It's a futuristic combat goggles that give soldiers a brand new way to see the battlefield. Not only can soldiers see in the dark, but they can see now through smoke and even peek around corners. Here's Martha Raddatz. Take a look.
Well, it sure sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like it'd solve a lot of problems. I don't think you'd ever hear these stories that it's a piece of shit. Microsoft's a big company. I'm being the grumpy old guy. There's been a lot of these things we've tried in the past that have failed terribly. So I hope we spend some time testing this out in the field and training before we send young men and women off with this as their stopgap measure.
Look.
It sounds like something out of science fiction. But the futuristic goggles these soldiers are wearing could transform the battlefield. A heads-up display, or HUD for short, allows soldiers to see terrain maps and an overhead compass in real time, helping to clear the fog of war.
You have like a little air.
Well, it sure sounds good. They can't even do land nav half the time with a compass and a map. This is great, but however, I was in Utah recently. 2 cell phone services didn't work, didn't have connection. Had GPSs not working. That would be my concern. We saw what happened with satellite phones in Afghanistan. And I want the tech to work, but I want it to work in training for several years before we send it off to the big leagues.
Arrow pointing like, hey, go this way.
And if it is dark and smoky, no problem. The goggles can see right through it and literally around corners.
It's a fighting goggle that's supposed to, really upgrade situational awareness and the way that the men and women of the United States fight.
A complex system.
Now, the goggle element of this with the night vision and the thermal, you can see around corners as well, sounds outstanding. When you get into using this for navigation, determining the 3D maps, I guess using drone footage and satellite footage, seems like a lot of moving parts they really have to flush out before they put this into practice. Now, you'd say, hey, dumbass, of course they will. Historically, the military has not been very good at doing this type of thing. That's why I even comment on that, because you've got the guinea pigs being young E2s and E3s that do this. But if they can do it in training with a small group of people who actually get deployed and not into an experiment division, that would be a vast improvement.
That is simple to use.
You can use a smartphone, you can use a system.
It is called IVAS, an acronym for the typically clunky military name for the device, the Integrated Visual Augmentation System. Based on Microsoft's HoloLens that uses holograms as teaching aids, IVAS is designed as a fighting.
When I hear Microsoft, I get nervous. I hope this isn't going to be like Windows Vista, any of the other shitty operating systems we've had. Now, the question becomes, there is so much money involved in this. How are we going to get a real objective decision on it? The generals get out and become advisors and lobbyists. And I'm being a little cynical because we've got a history of doing these kind of things that aren't in the best interest of the military per se, but maybe in the best interest of the company.
Goggle.
The future is here. This is going to fundamentally change the way we do business in the United States military.
ABC News was given exclusive access as the Army's top leaders and Microsoft's CEO saw firsthand what IVAS can do. So how exactly can it help fight the enemy? With no need for paper maps, soldiers can use the goggles to plan their missions.
I can see where my entire platoon is.
My concern there would be that we over-rely on this type of tech, right? We don't spend enough time teaching the troops how to use traditional maps because it's more fun, right? The tech's, when it works, it's outstanding. When the tech's on point, everything's great. But when the tech goes bad, like we saw with, I believe it's Operation Red Wing, where the cell phone, the sat phone didn't work. I know tech's improved, but really pushing it here, trying to make this work. Now, the night vision, the thermal sound outstanding. It sounds like a great training tool. It's just going to be a function of if the military will let the cake bake long enough before they eat it.
is projected on like a holographic map.
It also means better communication.
You can mark enemy positions and share that across the board.
In training to clear out rooms, soldiers will see realistic holograms of enemy fighters. And as they did here, watch a video game-like replay of their training to look for any mistakes.
It is a system overload almost, but whenever you
Now, I know the paras have been using this type of thing for a while. To look at CQB training after the fact, look at what people did right and wrong. Sure, we've got to be using something similar. Now, the hologram, I think they just had a video like closed circuit television. They could see what people are doing right and wrong. Ideally, you have an instructor there to correct you on the spot and resolve the issue. I think we're trying to take something that is fundamentally already the wheel, and we're trying to recreate it on some of these things. Because tech's not going to solve all the problems. Except I do like the thermal night vision. And that to me is the biggest thing I hear that's going to be a benefit for the troops.
get used to it, it becomes second nature.
The goggles, a big improvement to the equipment they use now on the battlefield.
I
Night
bet.
vision no longer means looking through what looks like a straw, but a full 180-degree view. And with the turn of a knob, thermal technology does something night vision goggles can't do.
All of a sudden, smoke environments become clear as day.
Adding a scope.
Now, if you've ever looked through the thermal, I looked through it a couple of years ago, government thermal, and it is amazing. Very expensive. I want to say it was 12 grand or something along those lines. Hard to believe they can fit out every soldier with it. Ideally, we could use it with SF, Ranger, something along those lines that are deployed all over the place. Marines, I don't care, whoever. Somebody's going to use it in different environments to figure out what's not going to work. Because obviously that can be the big constraint with these things.
To rifles gives troops an edge in dangerous urban warfare.
Say there's a wall right here, you know, I can literally just peek my weapon around the corner, and whether I'm looking to the right, to the left, straight up, straight down, I have that picture in my view.
Troops testing the goggles pass suggested improvements to Microsoft engineers who are by their side.
By having them out here and working with all of the
I've heard some people talk about, well, the U.S. relies too much on air superiority, drones, and technology, right? We were fighting a group of people that were effectively 100 years behind us in technology, limited by rules of engagement. You got to ask yourself the question, in warfare, where does this tech just become too much and really not worth having? It doesn't do any more to help the troops. It may even actually hinder them just because of the hassle factor.
development folks. That's why we're moving so much faster.
The goggles are seen as a game changer for troops.
This is a transformational change for the United States Army.
Testing is already underway on new ways to enhance IVAS by placing cameras around armored vehicles so troops inside have a full 360-degree view of what's happening outside.
I would hope we already have that, right? I mean, shit, I can get cameras from my house that are see in the dark almost for almost nothing from Amazon in a day. I would hope we would have something like that on all of our personnel carriers and tanks because it's cheap, right? But that's not what we're talking about here. If this is one system, I don't think we could piecemeal it, like get the thermal night vision improved, get the surveillance around the equipment. But we're getting into the holograms for land nav, things of that sort. That's where it gets really tricky because you got to rely on that type of stuff.
But most importantly, Army leaders believe IVAS can make the difference between life and death.
You have the opportunity to rehearse it 50 times before you actually go on a real mission. I think it's going to save soldiers' lives.
The Army plans to begin fielding.
Well, if we can get something that's going to save people's lives and it truly works and it's going to be used as a training tool in addition to the regular training they're getting, sounds awesome. But I know once the military picks up something new, it runs with it, loves it, just keeps doing it over and over. They realize, hey, that's probably not the best idea. And then at that point, you've got a bunch of people that suffer the brunt of the boondoggle. I hope we don't get there on this new tech.
40,000 IVAS goggles by the end of next year. I'm Martha Raddatz for ABC News Live.
What do you guys think is the biggest benefit from this new tech? I find that the night vision, the infrared, outstanding. We should already have surveillance around the vehicles. But the question of the day is, do you think the military will let the cake bake long enough before they eat it?